The deafening sound of something hitting the ground caused Zoey's eyes to go blurry as they instantly filled with tears. "Miss, why did you let go of her hand?" one of the police officers asked Zoey with a dark expression. Zoey shook her head, crying hysterically. "I didn't do it on purpose, I swear it. It was not intentional." The officer looked surprised. "Miss, how can you say it was not intentional? I saw you let go of her hand with my own eyes. Why did you want to hurt this woman? What do you have against her? I'm going to need you to come with me down to the police station for questioning." From deep in the trap, Blaine shouted angrily up to the police. "Somebody call an ambulance. What are you waiting for? This woman's injuries are severe. She has serious head trauma and we need to get her to the hospital right away." Zoey's mind went blank for a moment when she heard what Blaine said. She took 2 steps back in panic as tears gushed uncontrollably out of her eyes. She really didn't do it on purpose. It was clear that something had stabbed into her palm, causing her to let go reflexively. As Zoey thought of this, she opened up her hand. There was a needle-sized hole in the center of her palm, and blood was still seeping out. What had she been stabbed with? How did it manage to stab her? The only possibility was that it was in Sofia's hand already when she reached out and asked Zoey to help her. Zoey suddenly felt dizzy as she remembered seeing Sofia untie the rope around her waist right before reaching for Zoey's hand. She felt herself break out into a cold sweat as shivers ran down her spine, and the hairs on the back of Zoey's neck stood on end. Sofia had done this on purpose. "Miss Fuller, we're going to need you to come with us back to the station. You can give whatever statement you come up with at that time, but with so many police witnesses, I encourage you to acknowledge your crime. Now, get in the car." The policeman didn't want to hear what Zoey had to say and signaled for her to get in the squad car. Zoey couldn't help but look at Blaine as he brushed past her before hurrying to the ambulance alongside Sofia. He looked extremely worried. Perhaps he would think this was an act of jealousy because Zoey had witnessed the intimacy between him and Sofia. Zoey closed her eyes. She didn't know if she had ever felt as lonely as she did at this moment. Zoey had been in the police station for hours. They obviously had no intention of letting her go. The officer who had been interrogating her stepped back into the room after taking a call. He sat down and told her sternly, "Miss Fuller, I just received a call from the hospital. Miss Quincy's injuries are serious, and she is in critical condition. Let me tell you, you better pray that she makes it through this. If anything happens to her, prepare to spend the rest of your life in prison." "I repeat, I didn't mean to hurt her." As Zoey spoke, her pale lips were trembling violently. Zoey was growing suspicious of these policemen. They seemed so ready to accuse her versus doing their jobs and investigating. "Can't you see the wound in my palm? Why don't you investigate this matter? Isn't that your job?" Zoey asked in frustration. The policeman impatiently put down his pen. "Miss Fuller, no matter how the wound on your hand came about, we have witnesses who saw you let go of Miss Quincy's hand. I'd advise you to admit your guilt." "I'm not guilty. Why should I admit anything? I will not plead guilty to something I didn't do. You need to get off your do your jobs and investigate." Zoey was angry. Zoey's temper enraged the policeman. He wouldn't let this woman tell him how to do his job. "You better watch your mouth. Treat me with respect when you speak to me. You're already in enough trouble." Zoey felt extremely wronged. She kicked the table in anger and frustration. Tears of grievance poured out of her. "Let me tell you, you'd better not let me out. The first thing I will do when I get out of here is file a lawsuit. This is police misconduct and discrimination. I demand to see a lawyer right now. I am entitled to legal counsel under the law. Or wait, is that another one of those pesky laws you're going to conveniently ignore?" The officer hissed at Zoey angrily. "We're done here. Maybe some time in lockup will change your mind and you'll admit your crimes." He then stood up. "Guard, please escort Miss Fuller to a cell." Zoey had no idea how long she'd been locked up in the dingy cell. She had lost all track of time. In the night, Zoey shivered with cold. The paper-thin blanket on the prison cot was useless. She'd finally been offered something to eat, but her stomach was so upset from the stress she couldn't even take a bite. Not that the ham sandwich looked appealing anyway. Just as Zoey was beginning to give up all hope, the door to her jail cell was suddenly open. Zoey raised her head to look at the officer standing there. She hadn't seen this particular policeman before. She could barely believe the words coming from the officer's mouth. "Please come with me, Miss Fuller. You're being released."
Hi, Zoey here. If you are wondering what happens next, then download the Pocket FM app and listen to the exciting episodes of Rekindled Heartache now.